Hello everyone, welcome to Helsinki, virtually or otherwise. We are starting Apidays Helsinki and North for the fourth time, and we have a lot of attendees, around 1,000 attendees from different countries all around the Northern Europe, but also from other parts of the world. So welcome everybody. Hyvää huomenta, like we say in Finland, that means good morning. So I challenge everybody, of course the speakers, to practice that and answer back as hyvää huomenta. Okay, that's enough of language learning. Why we are here today is that we are trying to connect digital with physical. So you remember all when we used to have phones that were actually on the table and we were picking them up to call somebody. Well, nowadays they are obviously all apps in our mobile phones or something else. And this same change has been going around in different industries. And now we are exploring that a lot in this event. So there will be talks about APIs in the forestry industry, in construction, in weather, in cranes, in locking and access management, like physical locks, not the digital ones. And there's going to be a lot of examples from different places and industries. And we have some really great speakers from the public sector too, who are going to showcase us some good examples on how public sector can also join in connecting the physical and digital, not always devices or machines, but also human beings, people, jobs, like, for example, the Swedish API winners that are going to present today in the morning track. So what we are going to expect otherwise in the event is that we are going to have a lot of talks around API security. That seems to be the name of the game this year. A lot of sponsors and a lot of speakers around API security from different perspectives, especially today. In the afternoon tracks, we'll have API management, API ops related talks. We have API security related talks. We have even talks around fintech APIs and security, as well as other aspects of fintech and mobility. We have sponsors who are demoing us and showing us their new toys and tools that can help us all. There's the workshop track and then some roundtables. So hopefully you have signed up for those workshops already, but if you haven't, just join in anyway and get a handful of how things work in real world and real tools. We have some amazing sponsors, first of all. So we have the IBM as platinum sponsor and VIP as the global security sponsor. And we have also Solis as gold sponsor, and also Zero, Axway, Datadog, Graph CMS, Gravity, Imperva, Solita, CubeShop, and Integrella. So thank you all sponsors for making this event possible this year too. Without you, it wouldn't be so easy to arrange. And then I will want to explore a bit on our keynotes today and tomorrow. So this morning, we are going to have two keynotes that are going to look at the kind of past and present of API days and APIs, but also explore what's happening in the API management scene. So Mehdi Medjaoui will be giving the first talk, and here he is on cue. This is very, like you read my mind, or the track manager read my mind. So Mehdi, what do you think? We have this year, again, we have a lot of API business talks, and then we have a lot of these very technical talks. Where is the future going? Can you give us a hint, maybe, even though we are going to talk about it for a long time today?
Yes, thank you, Mariuka. Hello, everyone. Welcome at Apidays Helsinki and North. Yeah, the future will. The main question is like is the future will be a continuation of the past? The thing is, over the last 10 years, at least what we've seen in API Days conferences, we've seen that, let's say, from 100% tech background coming to the event, and today with our main events, we go up to 40% of business people, like non-tech background, but people
Yeah.
who identify themselves as API practitioners, marketing, business, or design, or whatever.
Mm,
But yeah, up to 40%. So it seems the business people are owning the API mindset more and more.
mm,
And I think the tech people will always be there, but we will see a lot of no code, a lot of tools for just business people
yeah.
to be able to onboard APIs.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because I remember like back in the day, around 10 years when I started going to API events, and I was kind of mid-ground business and tech, and I was like, am I in the right place? Because there were so many tech talks around APIs. And then there were I'm going to say this because I'm a woman, I can say this, but there were like the marketing girls and the tech boys giving the talks, and it was really, a bit unbalanced. And then suddenly somewhere it started changing, and we were seeing a lot more of like this, how do you actually make business out of APIs? And that's actually something that we're going to have in tomorrow's keynote. So there's going to be API business models, and what's the difference between like products and products, API products and other products. And then there's going to be an interesting talk, which I'm waiting a lot for, like climate fund from Finland. Pia is going to talk about how to actually make business and invest in API based and digital based platforms with that actually may help us to tackle some of these climate change and other issues that we're getting into. And I think that might be something that is the future of APIs too, that we start to think about APIs as not just a technology or just a business case, but also a solution to solve kind
Yeah,
of
totally
global
agree.
or other problems.
Yeah, really, I totally agree on this. And yeah, this is why 3 years ago we started the Women in API initiative. I agree with you.
Mm.
10 years ago, it was really female in marketing, male in engineering. But we've seen more and more female in
Yeah.
engineering and more male in marketing and product
Yes.
management too. It's not enough. We still need more female representation in engineering. But let's say, yeah, there is
Mm.
some diffusion between both genders and different roles. So that's really a good sign. And the Women in API initiative we conduced and we're still conducing is part of it. And thank you, Marika, to be active and inspiring other female to onboard in the PI space.
Thank you. And I think it's just important for everyone, because I think that one of the things we've seen in the Women in APIs is not only women being empowered with about talking about APIs, but also men coming in and getting maybe new perspectives to APIs, and maybe thinking about organizations that do APIs, but also kind of contributing to the discussions. And that has been really interesting. But hey, so you are probably almost ready to give your talk. So can we kind of get your slides up, and we might just look at this. What is this? API industry state of the market update. That sounds super interesting. So I'm waiting for your talk eagerly. I'm sure everybody else is. Put some comments in the chat while listening to Mehdi. And then also, if you have any questions, put them on the chat. I will pick them up at the end. And I'm sure, Mehdi, you will have time to answer a few questions. So with that, I think we're ready to start your talk. Go ahead, Mehdi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mariuka. Hello, everyone. So the goal of this talk about the API industry state of the market will be to talk about the last 10 years of the API industry, what's happening now, and opening about what will be happening in the next 10 years if it continues like that. Of course, any disruptor may come and change these predictions, but at least we can really see the present and actually make extrapolation about it. So yeah, let's dive into that. So yeah, my name is Mehdi Medjaoui, for the one who don't know me. I'm the founder and chairman of Apidays conferences. So we started in 2012. And then every conference organizer said, I want to make mine in my country, like Mariuka, in Helsinki and North. And so, yeah, now we have 10 conferences every year, gathering a community of 300,000 online members. And you can follow me at Medjaoui on Twitter if you're interested more about what I tweet or what I say. Our latest publication, except the State of the Market report that I will present today, it's a book on continuous API management. It's a European Commission report on API for government, why, what, and how, and also a report about data portability without APIs, just applying regulation, but when there is no API, but you still want to transfer data, what's happening? In some app, it doesn't work yet, but let's say, yeah, you have access to these reports. So yeah, we're talking about this API landscape. So we've done a work to have like almost all the tool we think every marketing manager, every tech manager, tech engineer should know or must know about. We've gathered a little bit around like 1,200 tools, platforms, products. They're available on the API landscape, on apilandscape.apiscene.io, but the goal of this presentation is to help you to understand and how to navigate into that landscape so you can really understand what's going on. So this landscape is divided in 5 parts on the 1,200 tools. We really have the API lifecycle platforms, the backend beginning tools, the API as a product or business process as a service, integration platform as a service, and vertical abstractions. So that really compose all this landscape. And today, over the last 10 years, this has accumulated a total value of the total number of investment of $174 billion, right? The cumulative funding to date is $174 billion, mostly for API lifecycle platforms that represent more than half of all these investments with $100 billion. The backend beginning tools are also there with 10 billion. The business process as a service are also key. They're also extremely important with $34 billion. And integration, like integration platform as a service or vertical API abstractions, represent a sum with the two around $25 billion. Just to give you a hint. So API lifecycle platforms are really rolling it, but the market is really more stable, but we'll see it's more a commodity, and we will see where's the growth these days in the API landscape. The number of ecosystem enablers, if you mix, the majority is really about the business process as a service. You know the quote, there is always an API for that. And this API, when it's a product, this API, we put it in the business process as a service or as an API or API as a product. This is why they are mostly the majority numbers. We have the API lifecycle platforms also right after. Of course, it's a lot more mature. And actually, they power the business process as an API or as a service. So you need an API management platform, API lifecycle platform to manage all your APIs. So this is why we have so many tools in that aspect. And in these tools, we count as much let's say the vendor tools or the open source tools. So that's really important to consider. And then you have the backend beginning tools, integration platform as a service numbers. And yeah, so API lifecycle platforms, to sum up this first part, are really the platforms help you manage the full cycle from design to documentation to testing to monitoring to management, security, versioning, and promotion of your APIs, right? The backend building tools are really like where you can host the data and produce API on the fly, like like a backend, mobile backend as a service, or a database, data as a service or database as a service APIs. So yeah, really where you can put some data, they manage everything for you, they deliver you an API, right? You don't have to host it yourself. And then we have the APIs as a product. So the APIs as a product are the Stripes, the Twilios, the SendGrids, the segments, all these API products. Of course, there are more than that, but we took a selection of the most representative one that will help you to compose your business between different bricks. The integration platform as a service are, these kind of huge SDK or huge environment where you can integrate APIs on the fly with the same logic. So some tools are dedicated to that, mostly for sometime automation, orchestration, where you can integrate 1 to 10 different APIs, orchestrate them, build business workflows. So these are really in the integration platform as a service. And we have also the last section, the vertical API abstraction and API aggregators. Like in banking, for example, you have a lot of aggregators who aggregate a lot of banking APIs and deliver you only one. So because you don't want to integrate 100 banking APIs to do the same stuff, you want to focus on delivering value for your customers. So these abstractions or aggregators are in this part. So, but what trends and what strategic takeaways we can see from this landscape? So over the last 10 years, what we have seen, what we see coming. The first one is that the main one, and we don't consider it a trend. Now it's a fact. It's a de facto fact of the landscape, is that API management has become a commodity, leading to new open source growth. Let's see an example. So market research agencies estimate the value of the market, like in really revenue per year, will be growing for 1.8 billion in 2020. So that's really numbers that are true and that have been verified, to 13 billion by 2028, with a compound annual growth rate of 28%. So that's really a growing industry, and it's really in what Gartner calls the plateau of productivity. It's not hype anymore. It's really in the last phase, and it will grow because the whole ecosystem is growing. So that's really important to consider. The growth of the market is really big. In the last year, we had recent consolidation for the market players. We had companies acquiring other API management tools, acquiring other API lifecycle platforms, and everything. So you can see Salesforce acquiring MuleSoft 2 years ago for 6.5 billion. Axway has acquired Accelerators, and Vordel, I think it was even 10 years ago. Google acquired AppSheet, Apigee, UserGrid, Firebase. So you can see really the consolidation that you have seen on the market. And yes, that means there's a lot more mature. When a new feature were coming, like big players, big vendors knew they would have to own them to not miss the market. So yeah, this is why they acquired them. Funny enough, let's say the value of these acquisitions really grew over time. When Google acquired Apigee, it was $625 million, which is compared quite low when you consider that few years later, Salesforce acquired MuleSoft for 6.5 billion. So the boom of the market is really coming the last few years, but companies who have been acquired more than 3 years ago didn't catch up this goodwill. So it's important to consider. But this enable this commoditization, the fact big vendors acquire, so we can estimate a lower innovation rate, like open new opportunity for open source. One of the most famous ones are represented here. You have like recent players like Tyke and Gravity, who are, let's say, known as low-cost open source, and then now have full enterprise features. They raise money to do that. Maybe the first player was really WSO2, who has been known to be the first main open source platform happening there. And then you have other players who followed that, which are a lot more mature right now. You have the 3Scale by Red Hat. You have Kong, who are kind of really mature enterprise grade and have been there for longer than the others. And then you have also other players that comes from different aspects. Nginx, that come from proxy and reverse proxy open source communities, and Solo, who really design more for service mesh, microservices, and comes into, let's say, the API game. And Solo raised 130 million last year. So yeah, so this open source ecosystem is really vibrant, and it's really challenging the old players. And of course, you can install them as open source, or you can like buy an enterprise version where they support for you or when they host things for you. But yeah, these players are key and extremely important in terms of adoption currently in the market. But the trend we've seen is really the explosion of tech regulation who are involving APIs. So an example in healthcare, the HL7 fire in the US, or the smart also in the US. So there's new rules when there's API. Like definitely, like the regulator came into the game and said, look, it should be fair, it should be interoperable for industries who have not followed that path. So healthcare is one of them, but we know also the banking regulation, like PSD2, for example, in Europe. So it's a regulation obliging banks to open APIs in a fair way, in a natural way, to every, let's say, application that is registered as a account information provider or payment initiation service provider, like a specific certification. But yeah, everyone can access banking APIs as long as you have the right certification. So yeah, so healthcare, banking, other are coming. But also one important regulation that involves APIs is really the data protection regulations. So in Europe, we know the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. But in other countries, and you can see a map about like where countries are, there's many regulations obliging companies now to respect personal data, respect sharing personal data rules and compliance and policies. So it impacts APIs. Now, the gateways, the management gateways needs to be also privacy gateways. Definitely, they need to check if personal data is shared or not at runtime, on the API level, on the authorization level, and that completely changed the game. Of course, not companies are compliant right now, but let's say regulation came into the game in healthcare, in banking, in general data protection, and are really obliging companies to have APIs. The trend number 2 is really that we see more and more industry-specific solutions. And they emerge, as we said, because of regulation sometimes, but they emerge in banking, government, insurance, and healthcare. So you can see in the landscape, you can see part of tools that are dedicated to banking, finance, and insurance backends, or API aggregators dedicated for finance. So this is an extract of what we see in the landscape. But yes, these are really some trends and few examples. But like Yapily is just an API management for open banking. Just they focus on that, or TrueLayer, the same, just raise money for that value proposition. A vendor, Axway, just opened an open banking platform in Brazil, where a new regulation is coming about open banking, obliging banks to open APIs, right? Other vendors like Gravity added like what we call FAPI, like financial grade APIs into their solution. And WSO2 received funding from Goldman Sachs, the bank, funding an API management solution, to be able to structure and better muscle up their open source feature set for finance. Also, a new industry that's coming, it's open insurance. So there's a new initiative called the Open Insurance Initiative, because insurance for now is not directly impacted by regulation for APIs. So there's no current regulation obliging insurance to open APIs in a certain way. So some insurers have gathered to be able to answer as a whole, as an industry, about delivering APIs before the regulation obliges them to do so. And so, yeah, so just to say, this industry is also having their own solution coming because of this initiative. The trend number 3 that we can see definitely on these 1,200 companies is that API security now is the standalone product. We will see that privacy is the next differentiation maker, but you will see at Apidays Helsinki and North that, and at all conferences this year, more and more talk about API security, and you understand why it's quite obvious. It's for 2 reasons. The first one is that the DevSecOps approach has conquered the mindset of engineers and of companies, as we said, sometimes shifting left. Before you deploy an application, you deploy APIs, and you spend time building them. And when you deploy, actually, the chief security officer come and say, look, yeah, it was not secure, you have to redo it all over. That was making a lot of companies losing time and money and agility and enthusiasm when building new applications. So we decided to put security earlier in the development process. So now every time a code is pushed in production, a lot of security checks are done. This is what we call the DevSecOps approach, putting security into the DevOps cycle. So you are familiar probably with the DevOps approach. But the thing is that if you also check security with every new code that is produced, you don't have to check security at the end. So you're really shifting left the security controls. And for API, it's the same, because APIs involve sharing data with other application inside an organization or outside an organization. And you really want to be sure that your APIs are secured. So that's the first approach. But the second approach, you know it. Unfortunately, in the world we know it. It's because of the COVID, because of the COVID-19. We had to digitalize everything. Employees were working remotely. We had to open all the systems, sometimes too fast. So of course, it enabled great digital adoption across all Europe and US and in the world. But the thing is that companies have opened too much, too fast, without control. So the API that were in preparation, not ready for prime time, have been pushed on prime time directly and exposed to many applications, many users, and now there are holes everywhere. So this is why security, and we will see that in the numbers, but have raised a lot of money these days, because now API security is a standalone product. The trend number 4 that we've seen is that APIs are a new layer of business and tech infrastructure. People who have been there in the last 10 years consider it's not new, but let's say now it's proved by the numbers. To resume that part, I will quote the CEO and co-founder of Twilio, that was a speaker at Apidays, but he said, the world is getting broken down into APIs. Every part of the stack of business that a developer might need to build is eventually turning into APIs that developer can use. He wrote a book about it called Ask Your Developer, and I really recommend that book. But the idea behind that is that, yes, we had a supply chain for 100 years in, for example, the automotive industry that has been set up with specialization. A lot of companies, instead of doing the whole car, when the car market has grown, there are new opportunity for smaller companies to build just components of that car. And it's the same for application. With the application market booming, now you can build just part of the application, deliver it as an API. So it can be payment, it can be SMS, it can be a specific recommendation algorithm, it can be the search engine, it can be the emailing, it can be the whatever, the SMS, whatever. But it can, all these parts are actually available via APIs and enabled to build application for the people who wants to build application. So let's say the application market is really broken down into APIs, but these APIs now represent a huge infrastructure, from infrastructure as a service, like cloud, to platform as a service, to software as a service. There is an API at every layer of the stack, where actually you can use the software built by someone else to power your own application. So it's a kind of a digital supply chain that we can see, but it's not nuts and bolts, but it's APIs now. And you can see, for example, in the landscape, you will be able to see, but the business process as a service API products are really this infrastructure that really helps to build application based on others. This is why we can consider it an infrastructure, because it's really the walls and the roads and the bridges of this digital infrastructure layer, all delivered via APIs that you can integrate, so you can focus on your main value proposition. So I said some company here, but Stripe, Twilio, ADN for payment too, Plaid, SendGrid, Avalara for tax calculation. And these companies have outstanding valuation because actually they provide the functionality for everyone. So that's why they're successful, because everyone needs payment at some point. Everyone needs an SMS or a call functionality at some point. Everyone needs to interact with banks at some point, or email or tax or whatever. So yeah, they do it for everyone. There is also new standards coming, new de facto standards, let's say, or standards. But yeah, there are the Open Initiative who who took the leadership at the Linux Foundation of the Open API definitions, so the standard to describe APIs. Now you have the async API standard, who is it's not an official standard by the IETF, but it's really a de facto standard for describing event-driven APIs, like streaming APIs as we call it. You have gRPC, who mostly is used for, let's say, high availability microservice APIs. But yeah, let's say Google opened that specification. You have JSON schema to be sure that an API response is the one you expect. And you have also recent technologies like GraphQL or Vulkan, who enable to interact with APIs in a different way. But let's say we also have a lot more conventions, a lot more standards that everybody agree on. So that also is part of the new layer of infrastructure. Now, when we build APIs, we have a lot more processes. It's a lot more engineered in a sense that we respect conventions, standards, and processes that other companies also are applying. So yeah, this is this globalization of API production, as we would say, if we compare with the digital supply chain idea. And so I love this this drawing from Banking Asia. They represent like the few now for example, in open banking. What are the bricks? What are the Lego bricks that actually you can have directly as an API, and so you can assemble them to build different aspects. So you can see from core banking to plug and play banking to card wallet and transfers into payment into customer acquisition. But you can see like a lot of bricks actually there, and the goal, you can build a bank tomorrow. You can build a bank by mixing different banking as a service APIs who just do one part of banking, but actually you assemble them all, and you can pick and choose between different ones, and at the end you have the application you want. The trend number 5 is that really low code is really booming, and as we call, the growth of citizen developers is really enabled by APIs. The most emblematic company here is really Zapier, right? Who is really pushing the market towards the right direction. Just to think, Zapier is now valued at $5 billion, but they raised only 1.4 million. So they have been almost profitable since the beginning. They just raised a small seed round, but let's say, yeah, Zapier is really enable a lot of business people to interact with APIs without the need to talk to a developer, and actually democratize the use of APIs, and actually enable a lot more business people to be involved. There are other companies like Retool or AppSheet that has been acquired by Google for $2 billion, just to show that Google Cloud, for example, really want to push for citizen developers. So APG for API management, but AppSheet for, let's say, citizen developers to still use APIs that are produced by the company or that outside that are outside the company. And it's driven by many drivers, because the like IT cannot deliver all, so business people needs to be independent at some point. We already have internal APIs that expose data and functionalities, but they need to be orchestrated. So the business people needs to own them. It's just that. So if you put it in a low code approach or no code approach, business people will be able to open it. All the SaaS tools now wants to talk also to business people, so they integrate with this Zapier, Dashblock, Retool, no code platform. So, and I've seen a bank currently called Quanto, a mobile neobank, that actually hired no code people to build no-code integrations. So just to tell you, it's there, it's coming. And yes, also companies really want to prototype fast. Even if with no code you have some limitation, but you really want to prototype fast, and sometimes it's having a no-code integration with a platform with other systems help people to prototype really fast and deliver value, a small part of the value, but really fast, and then get funding to deliver the other part of the value. So to sum up, let's say, this part of the report, and we will see the what's changed over the last 3 months. Yeah, API management's market is growing really fast, becoming a commodity with a lot of open source. Regulation and forced publishing the use of APIs that enables specialization into API management into industries like banking, insurance, healthcare, or government. The COVID really pushed the production of APIs in the wild, and so API security now is a standalone product. APIs are more and more business infrastructure, more and more bricks to be able to build application, and for developers, but also for non-developers, our citizen developers are the next API users and the next consumers. So we published the landscape in last December, but in the last 3 months, we can see that what happens really around the globe. So as we said, dedicated management solutions really are growing. So you can see the number of calls of API banking in billion directly by APIs has really grown compared to other to previously, and you can see even Brazil now is coming into the game. The API use and API traffic is increasing, so it's a report by Salt Security that shows that in average the API traffic last year grew by 321%. And among 250 customers, the number of APIs in average was to 135. So a growth of 221%. So just to say, it's booming and it's still booming. There are some deals, some important deals. It's $30 million deals for Google Apigee with the Ministry of Veteran Affairs. Funny enough, the Ministry of Veteran Affairs was the first ministry in the US who wanted to have APIs, and they hired at the time Kinlane for the API evangelist blogger as a presidential innovation fellow. So the work that has been done 8 years ago now in US government is paying off at large, because they need the API management solution at large scale. And API skills are top of workforce demand. You will see that the numbers, but for now, API skills, they're on the 10 most in-demand freelance skills on Upwork. So definitely we need more API people, and we don't find them as employees. So we have to look for them as freelance. Since 3 months, we added 55 tool providers. So now we have a little bit more than 1,100, almost 1,200. And you can see in orange the comparison between the last 10 years. So it's still growing, still booming in every section. And if you can go on the landscape, if you want to go on the landscape, you will be able to add your own tools. So just to say, more and more tools launching. And in the recent batch of Y Combinator, a famous startup accelerator.
Can I stop you for a moment? We have a problem with your slides not changing. So the audience was asking if you can do some API magic to change the slides.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great.
They're changing for me.
Yes, now they're changing for me too. Good.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Don't know what happened, but okay. Thank you for helping me notice. So I was saying, you can see in orange the new players that are coming over the last 10 years, and in blue the players over the last 10 years, just to see the big difference. But the difference. The API industry is still innovating. I hope you can see the slides moving because I just moved it. But 30 new patents in the US mention APIs since in Q1 2022. So company still wants to protect, let's say, APIs in their IP policies and strategy. So it's still something we prepare for the next 10 years there. And just recent addition on the landscape, you can see there are many different companies, but you have API aggregators, automation orchestrations, data analytics and algorithm, like company like Digital API Craft, Friends, or Pinwheel is just an example, but in different region of the world. But you will see there is a lot more coming. The 55 we added since last quarter. In total, we received in the last 3 months, there were 4 billion of total new investments, in the last 3 months only. And you can see in orange the comparison with the previous 10 years is quite significant. It's quite significant over just 1 quarter versus 10 years versus 40 quarters. And you can see in orange it's quite significant in terms of funding. So the vibe is still there. And you can see the top players. The top player is a Quanto, an API-driven bank, neobank. But we have also some vendors like Software AG, Mambu, with 377, 258. If you go further, you have SnapLogic, Airbyte, Salt Security, Typeform, No Name, We are also software vendor at some point, so it's mostly tooling there that is there, but in some API, let's say, platforms. But yeah, $4 billion. Yeah, over the last 3 months. We can also notice on the top right Asura, a GraphQL platform. But yes, just to tell you, yeah, funding is all around the place. Just about job, just a number that's interesting. So in blue, this was the number of open positions at the end of 2021, and in orange now it's the number of open positions that we can see on careers page or on Indeed or LinkedIn or Monster or websites like that. And you can see that now it's really booming. The post-COVID era is there because it grew by between 50% or 250%, depending on the industry. And just few examples. Even smaller company like Gravity are hiring for 24 positions. Spot, another company, is hiring with 104 positions, and top big players like Stripe have 2,300 open positions. Just to tell you the boom that is coming. And yes, like when you have to hire 2,300 people in the API space and there is not so much available, yeah, the skills is really key now when you own a key. Let's also remind the Great Resignation, like all the people who quit their job during COVID because their job was not the one they wanted. So now it's even more, it's even harder to have API skills. So, and just to finish, so I shared with you the prediction we made at the end of Q1, the 5 prediction happening and how these prediction are actually going. So we said regulation will come into the game and oblige the API publication. It's over the last 3 months in Europe, we had the Data Governance Acts about regulation and data sharing that oblige at some point, doesn't explicitly mention it, but without APIs, you will not be able to share the data as they say. They also proposed the Health European Data Space, to be able to be interoperable with US healthcare APIs. So yeah, regulation will come into the game, obliging or pushing the idea of APIs for interoperability. In the United States, the White House enabled the account switching by APIs, and they again for banking, and also we had this Access Act that defines interoperability and promotes API standards as the way to make data interoperable between applications and platforms. It goes beyond GDPR. It pushed really the idea of APIs for interoperability, and yes, they almost say it's a mandate. So yeah, regulation come into the game in the US about APIs for data sharing. And in Brazil, the open insurance and open banking regulation commenced. Yeah, so just to say, like, it's really coming in big markets like Brazil. So regulation are pushing, again, the adoption of APIs. Trend number 2, the industry-specific solution, as we said, is it still happening? Yes, 90 million invested by JP Morgan in WSO2. We have some startups dedicated for banking and health, for example. As we said, these open EHR API standards enable the creation of new platforms dedicated to that standard. And an example of a vendor, Sensedia, launched directly open insurance opportunities like open insurance tooling dedicated for that. So yeah, this trend about industry-specific solution is really applying. The trend number 3 is that API security. So you can see a lot of funding. We are preparing a landscape dedicated on security, but from a company like Traceable, No Name, 42Crunch, Salt Security, more than $200 million have been invested in the recent month. So that's really crazy. There is who will win this API security war? We don't know, but let's say, yeah, API security is definitely now a standalone product. Trend number 4, as we said, APIs are the new layer of business infrastructure. And yes, this is also there. A recent study showed the number of integrations for companies like Salesforce, Shopify, Adobe, Atlassian, more than 4,000 integrations. So yes, APIs here are really a layer of business. So to build platforms, Zoom has 1,500 integrations. So this is how you became a huge platform. This is how you became an infrastructure yourself. Is that because you onboard other to become part of your supply chain, and now you are delivering for others. So that's really key. And in a recent study about the state of APIs, 98 of organizations interviewed declare the API as essential to their digital tech stack. So APIs are the road, the bridges, and the global infrastructure of the space. And last but not least, we said low code and growth of citizen developers. It's really happening. So just an example, in Zapier, they declared, it's the main company in the space, but declared a no-code day in the US, like celebrating National No-Code Day and the ability for people to build without the need of coding. In Europe, there is the Allegria group who built a no-code bootcamp as a symphony to learn how to no-code. But the thing is, they say with no-code, in a few months, you can deliver applications that are as good as what a developer would have done in a few years. Being a developer is hard, but being a no-code developer, building with bricks of the infrastructure is a lot easier. So yeah, they consider they can deliver a no-code developer in 3 months. And also business people. So onboarding business people to be no-code developers. And also digital consultancies are increasingly working with their customers about no-code platforms, because it enables to go fast, to build minimum viable product really, really fast at lower budget, to see the value proposition. And then after that, we will build with code, right? With developers using APIs. But we will first use business people using APIs, but in a no-code manner. So, this landscape is a partnership between Apidays and Platformable. So I invite you to go on landscape.apiscene.io to see or to download the market landscape report. And we will give, if you sign up, we will give you new product features, industry trends, new investment, customer acquisition, and industry partnership. As a newsletter for you. So if you want to be tuned, yeah, you can go there and sign up. Thank you very much. And again, for more details, you can visit our interactive landscape on apilandscape.apiscene.io. Thank you very much. And Mariuka, I think we have 3-4 minutes.
Yes, I have some questions, and I'm waiting for the audience to have some questions too. So while we're waiting for the audience to comment and question, what do you think, like, in my experience, we've been training various people in APIs, but also more and more using no-code tools. So I have found that one of the blockers with no-code is actually that the business people have hard time to envision what they could do with APIs and the no-code platforms. What do you see are the kind of issues around business people and no-code platforms?
Yeah, but the documentation of no-code platforms is also important. And this is an example in Zapier. Why the success of Zapier was great is that they put in this, trigger and actions. So people could really understand the workflow. Like, yeah, this produced this action and triggers what other action or another one recently. Sorry. That's good.
No worries.
A platform
in Finnish.
A platform called if this then that, opened it like 10 years ago, and really say, okay, if this happened, then that, right? So when you have this methodology, this documentation, helping people to say, when this happens, what I do next, and this is what's available with the recipe, as they call it, it's a lot more easier for business people to know and to explore. But it's true that if you don't have a business case and you don't look for the no-code platform to answer it, it will be really hard to develop imagination out of the wild. So it still need to be delivered driven by business cases. And if there is a business cases there, then people can help you to find the right no-code tool that enable to answer that business need. If you don't have any case and you don't have any imagination, no-code can't help you.
Yeah, and I think that even though Zapier, for example, has those recipes, sometimes we bump into situations that it's just so imaginable to people that you could do this thing with APIs, that they just, they block themselves from thinking about a certain business case. And I think that is an interesting thing, and that's why we're even having that session today on stage 2 about helping you think outside of your box, basically.
But
That's good.
for the
So
last 40
then,
years,
yeah,
for the last 40 years, let's say we said to business people, no, IT should do it. Tell the specification, IT should do it.
Yeah.
Now we tell them you can do it, and they're completely lost. And so it's an education. It's an education.
Yeah. So there's a question from Robert. What will drive the API security and privacy landscape, regulation or risk? That's the final question for you.
Yeah, of course, both. Data breaches regulations are really pushing, like GDPR obliged to notify data breaches, and an API in the wild that someone access without authorization is a data breach. And so you have to, in the 72 hours, you have to make an open. You have to tell all your user base that is touched by this data breach. You have to declare it publicly. It's a process that everybody wants to avoid. So yeah, regulation obliging it is de facto key, but also the risk. The risk, having the data out wild, we can see the ransomware, like all the cyber attacks, especially in these times between Russia and Ukraine, and all this cyber war. But let's say the thing is, we see a lot more ransomware now. There are insurance against ransomware, but a lot of companies are afraid, and even recently vendors. API vendors, I cannot tell them, but have been under attacks and have been under ransomware. This is, there are really two reasons. The first is the PR, the bad PR, and the secondly is really the risk, the money of ransomware or of losing customer data.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mehdi, and we'll hear more about you in the other API days this year.